Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. And I do apologize about the acoustics in this room. Full disclosure, I am working with a high-end client right now, and I am actually helping him in regards to a collection that he owns. So in my basement office, I actually have pieces of that collection on my desk where I would normally film these videos. So because all that is pretty much confidential, I cannot film in that particular location right now. So I had to go to another room in my house, so I just chose this room because it is the most convenient room outside of my office. So that's why we're filming in this location. This video is going to be in regards to maintaining and storing a valuable collection for the short term or the long term. And let me specify, it doesn't matter what you collect. You can collect Rolex watches, rare coins, Pokemon cards, action figures, high-end pieces of art, even vintage Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and you're gonna get something out of this video. At least I hope. That's why I do these videos. So today we are talking about maintaining and storing a valuable collection. Now, there are 4 ways you can store any type of valuable collection that you have. Most of you guys out there are not like me. I live in a damn virtual museum. It is always cold in my house. There's things in display cases and on the walls in pretty much every room of this house, and you can't touch anything. I actually have signs up. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have signs up that say don't touch anything, but I do keep it fairly cold in here, believe it or not. More on that in another video as to why I keep it fairly cold in my house. I actually set the thermostat to 68 degrees almost all year round in this particular house. And again, that'll be the subject of another video when we talk about humidity and temperature controls in storage for antiques and collectibles. So you'll learn more about that when we dive into the science aspect of storage and maintaining various collections in the antiques and collectibles trade. Well, going back to what I was originally stating, there are 4 ways to maintain a valuable collection. Obviously, the first way is either in your primary residence or another building, location, warehouse, or secondary residence that you may own. I know a lot of people that come to me through the consulting services that I provide. A lot of these people have 2 or 3 houses. So it's not uncommon for them to have multiple collections split up between multiple residents and locations. Now, most people probably who are watching this video, you probably either have a man cave, or if you're a woman, you have a she cave somewhere in your house where if you have a type of collection that you love, a type of collection that you want to live with, it's probably on display in that particular room. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there still are precautions you have to take if you are going to keep and live with your primary collection. That'll be the topic of another video. You're going to see where I'm going with this in a minute, guys. Just bear with me. The second way that you can store a collection of any type is a safety deposit box in a bank. Now, obviously, safety deposit boxes, due to their size, work best with small, valuable items that are either typically made, and I'm going to specify this when we get to the video on this that I have planned, either out of paper or some type of metal or jewelry. So a lot of people who collect rare coins, currency, even graded cards, whether it's sports cards, Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering cards, even to a lesser extent comic books, collectible first edition books, jewelry, any type of precious metal, Rolex watches. People store a lot of those particular items that are small and valuable in safety deposit boxes. The cost is cost effective to do that, and it does provide excellent storage provided you follow certain precautions. Now, the third way that you can store a lot of your collections or valuables is through offsite storage, which is what we are going to be talking about in this video. So we have 2 types of offsite storage. We have climate controlled storage and we have non-climate controlled storage. Now, there is a 4th way, and most people are not aware of this. If you go to Google right now and you Google Robo Vault down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or you Google CRozier Fine Arts, which, full disclosure, is owned by Iron Mountain. Both those facilities offer high-end, full-service vault storage for high-end clients, museums, art collectors, and art connoisseurs. The type of people that are gonna rent vault storage through CRozier Fine Arts or Robo Vault, these are people that have net worths predominantly over $10 million or more, with most of these clients having net worths in the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. The average person, I don't care how wealthy you are, I don't care even if you have a net worth of $5 million, you are not most likely ever gonna use the services of Robo Vault or CRozier Fine Arts, even if you have a net worth that high. The people that are in that market, these are fine art connoisseurs. These are the type of people that own like $18 million Lamborghinis or collectible Ferraris, or they own certain items that pretty much put them at the top 1% of the game, whether we're talking antiques and collectibles, and also usually in their professional lives. So you're talking high-end, rock star status business people, doctors, lawyers, entertainers, industrial magnates, people of that nature that have that much money where they can go to the market, they can buy a $50 million painting. They already know how the game is played. They know how to have it stored, have it maintained, have it shipped. They know all the costs. Those are the type of people that would use those particular storage facilities. So going back to offsite storage, this is the most common type of storage I see the average collector out there using. Whether they're a comic book collector, whether they're a vintage toy collector, whether they're a hardcore antique collector, connoisseur, dealer, whatever they're involved in, most people at some point or another will gravitate towards offsite storage. Full disclosure, I use offsite storage. I also have items stored in other buildings that I own. But for the most part, I have nothing against offsite storage if it is done right. Now, there are two types of offsite storage. There's regular, traditional offsite storage, which is pretty much the equivalent of a storage shed. That's really all it is. Whether or not the facility offers 24-hour surveillance and other features, that's in addition to the basic storage that they offer you for a flat rate every month. For the most part, most people watching this video should not use non-climate controlled offsite storage. Now, there are exceptions to this rule. For instance, if you're watching this video and you collect vintage Harley Davidson motorcycles, or you collect classic cars, classic car parts, or maybe you collect even vintage advertising, certain pieces of vintage advertising can be stored in a non-climate controlled facility. Do I recommend it as a person who does collect vintage advertising? No, I do not. But I do know a lot of people do choose non-climate controlled storage for vintage advertising and other items of that particular nature. So it can be done. I am not 100% against that. But for most people who are collecting either traditional antiques, or if you're collecting comic books, sports cards, pop culture collectibles, vintage toys, video games, items of that nature, you're gonna wanna go with climate controlled storage. Now, this is where it gets very important. If you are going to rent climate controlled storage, you must make sure that the facility maintains both the temperature and the humidity year round. Let me say that again. For it to be true climate controlled storage, the facility you're renting from has to maintain the temperature and the humidity year round. There cannot be any variances in that. Some of these companies, they will only maintain one or the other. That is not true climate controlled storage. Now, most of these companies, unfortunately, use the same cookie cutter design. What do I mean by that? If you go and tour one climate controlled storage facility and you go tour another, the makeup and the design of those storage facilities along with the construction are very similar. They are pretty much a concrete slab with a metal building constructed upon that concrete slab that pretty much uses the same cookie cutter design as every single other storage facility out there that was ever created. Because usually, believe it or not, most of these companies, it doesn't matter what company you go to, it doesn't matter if it's a mom and pop outfit. When they set up the design of their climate controlled or non-climate controlled self-storage company, it's usually a company that comes in and they already use prefabricated designs to create those plans and to bring that design to life. So obviously, and you're gonna hear this again when I talk about safety deposit boxes in another video, most of the construction is done in the same fashion. Now that's both good and bad. Obviously, it saves the owners of those storage facilities a lot of money because they're using prefabricated plans. So they don't really have to pay for an architect every single time to start from scratch. They're pretty much just using a plan that's already out there and readily available. Also, a lot of the companies that build those self-storage facilities also build for other companies. So it's pretty much they're calling the same company on the phone saying, hey, I'm getting into the self-storage business. Can you set me up to come look at my site and build and design this facility that you've done 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 times before? So that's why all those facilities look alike. Now that's both good and bad. Now, this is the bad news when it comes to climate-controlled off-site storage. Most of these companies set the thermostat between 55 degrees and 85 degrees year-round. Meaning if you go in there in the dead of winter and you live in a fairly cold climate, obviously it's going to be closer to 55 degrees. In the summer, if it's 120 degrees outside, your storage facility, even if it's climate-controlled, is most likely going to hit right around 85 degrees. Humidity is generally kept right around 50%, possibly a little lower than 50%. That does vary. But the temperature, make no mistake, is going to fluctuate year-round. It's not going to be as stable as your house or your primary residence or an office building or a warehouse that you own and control. Most of these companies try to cut costs as best they can. Easiest way to do that? Hey, it's snowing outside. It's very cold outside. We're going to set the thermostat to 55 degrees. People aren't living in a self-storage facility, hopefully. More on that in another video. There's a funny story I can tell about that, but we're not going to go off on a tangent today in this video. The same thing's true in the summer, as I stated. If it's 120 outside, guess what? They're going to set that thermostat to all the way up to 85. And with low humidity, or 50% or less humidity, you're really not going to feel the heat that much. But it does have a bearing on the items you are storing in that facility. Remember, 12 months in a year. As you cycle through that year and go through all 4 seasons, there are going to be temperature and humidity fluctuations that are experienced in that self-storage facility that are going to extend to the collectibles, the antiques, the valuable items that you are storing in that location. Make sure if you sign a lease for one of these companies, you understand how they define temperature controlled and also how they set their thermostat year-round. They should be willing to tell you that. Now, exposure to the elements is still an issue even in climate-controlled storage. This is something that a lot of people get wrong. Remember, if you take your car to your climate-controlled storage unit, you open up the door, you pull something out. The minute you pull it out of that facility, it hits a different temperature range, especially if you go there in the winter, you go there in the dead heat of summer, it's going to hit a different temperature range. This can affect the items you are storing in the short term and the long term. So you must pay attention to that. I usually advise my clients, depending on what they're storing, the best time of year to pull something out of climate-controlled storage is actually in the spring or fall, depending on where you live and what the temperature is at that particular time. I usually tell people to try to pick a mild day to go to their storage facilities, even if they are climate-controlled for that reason. That way you don't allow fluctuating temperatures and air conditions in and out of that unit on a regular basis. Another thing I will tell you, those of you out there that collect video games, electronics, toys, that are factory sealed, that have tape seals, that have plastic bubbles, whether we're talking about vintage Star Wars figures, even modern era Funko Pops, Nintendo Amiibos, you want to store them towards the back of the unit. Now, why do you want to store these particular items towards the back of the unit? Because again, every time you open up that storage unit door, it changes the temperature in that particular facility. Now, if you store these items toward the back is getting less of that temperature change. So you want to store those type of items towards the back and put the less valuable items or the stuff that is easier maintained towards the front. Most people get this all wrong, and I usually have to explain to them either through a phone call, through my consulting services, or I got to take my time and tell them how best to pack a storage unit. Items going in to a climate-controlled storage unit, especially of a collectible nature. Doesn't matter if we're talking Tiffany glass, doesn't matter if we're talking collectible marbles, doesn't matter if we are talking toys, action figures, Lego, video games, Magic the Gathering cards, Pokemon cards, or the like. You want to use plastic resealable storage bins. So your Rubbermaid bins, items of that nature that have a reclosable lid, that's what you want to store your items in. If you are going to wrap any of your items up, for instance, I know a lot of you watching this probably have factory sealed Pokemon booster boxes, factory sealed Magic the Gathering booster boxes, even graded Star Wars figures. You're gonna wanna use acid-free tissue paper. If you go on eBay, you can literally Google acid-free tissue paper. You can order sheets of it. It is expensive, but that's what you're gonna wanna wrap that stuff up before you wrap it in bubble wrap or surround it by packing peanuts. Remember, guys, you have to be very careful how you store this stuff, even for the short term, not just the long term. I have more videos on this planned where I'm gonna go into detail on how certain chemicals react with certain collectibles. There's a lot of people, even high-end auction companies, make this mistake. They will use a non-archival bubble wrap or a non-archival wrapping. They will pack something and they will send it to a client's house who won the bid. That client will get it, they'll open it up, and by the time they got it, just the 7 to 14 days that it was through the mail stream already did irreversible damage to that collectible. I've seen it happen. I've had clients come to me, and we usually have to work with the auction company and say, hey, you guys packed this all wrong, or hey, you didn't know what the hell you're doing. This is not an archival packing material. Be very careful with that. Paper, believe it or not, is very acidic. If you do not use acid-free tissue paper, you are exposing your collectibles, your precious collections, to undue risk. Keep that in mind, guys. We're gonna go on here. Now, security. This is something that is very important. A lot of these facilities will tell you that they have 24-hour surveillance or they're 100% secure. Do not believe them. Yes, most companies do have 24-hour surveillance, and that's great. But you know what? It's not going to prevent most crime. Do you want to know why? Most crime at climate-controlled storage facilities is an inside job. It happens one of two ways. Let me teach you guys this. The first way is somebody rents a unit in that particular facility and learns, you know what? By being in this one unit, since all these other units use the same cookie-cutter design, I pretty much have access to the two units next to me. So if I know that Joe Blow or Sean Cermick is storing valuable collections in this offsite storage facility, all I got to do is present myself as a client. I go in, I try to rent a unit as close to his unit as possible, and if I'm lucky enough where there's a vacancy right next to his unit, I can rent his unit, and I can pretty much pull back the sheet metal, and I can have access to his unit from my unit. That's why most robberies, most thefts in storage facilities, especially climate-controlled off-site storage facilities, are inside jobs. The other way this happens is when you go to rent one of these units, they will ask you what you are storing, because most of these particular storage facilities require you to have insurance on the items that you are storing, or you have to pay for expensive insurance through their facility, and it's not cheap. Now, I did not do a video on collectible and antique storage yet, insurance in that regard. That video is coming. I am going to do a video on insurance for antiques and collectibles. So that will clarify a lot of what I mean in this particular segment. But what I am going to state to you is, when you give them that certificate from your insurance company, it usually lists some of the items that you're storing. If they see valuable antiques and collectibles, what do you think can happen? If you have a dishonest person working there, they can call up their brother or their friend or their boyfriend or their pimp or their drug dealer or whoever it is that they have on speed dial, and they can say, hey, I got this guy here that's storing valuable collectibles antiques, and he's in unit 1031. Well, guess what? They can easily give them all the information to basically get to that unit so they can get those valuables. They can steal it, and guess what? It's not gonna look like a breaking and entering. So as a result, you're gonna go into your unit and you're just gonna notice things missing, and you're gonna go, well, what happened here? And you're gonna go to the front desk and you're gonna tell them, hey, I think my unit was robbed. And they're gonna go, no, it wasn't. Don't be ridiculous. We're on 24-hour surveillance. And guess what? You're really not gonna get anywhere with a police report. Do you know why? Because it was an inside job. They're not gonna cop to it. Obviously, they just cleared out some valuable items that you had. They didn't tell you, and guess what? You're on the hook for it now. And you're gonna call up your insurance company. Again, that video is coming, and you know what your insurance company is gonna say to you? Well, where's the police report? Where is any signs of breaking and entering? And most likely, the insurance company is gonna deny that claim. And legally, they have every right to, guys, believe it or not. The last thing I wanna talk about is the cost. Now, this is something, and I waited to the end of this video to do this because this is usually the triggering aspect for a lot of the Timmies out there that watch this channel. Most off-site climate-controlled storage units are gonna cost you roughly $120 a month for a 10 by 10 unit. Now, here's the problem. Most Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters out there are not storing valuable items like I am, like other dealers, other high-end collectors in the trade are. And I'm not being mean when I say that. I just want to put this into your mind because it is important. If you are paying, I'm just going to round this off to $100 a month for storage, which if you can get a 10 by 10 climate-controlled storage unit for $100 a month, you're doing really well. Because I live right around the Philadelphia area. I can tell you the average rate for climate-controlled storage units, 10 by 10 around this area, is roughly $140 a month. But I know every area is different. So let's assume you can get one for $100 a month, guys. That is $1,200 a year. Now, I know a lot of you out there like to believe, and most of you are, but I'm just stating this as a fact, some of you out there like to believe that your collections are investments. Do you have any idea how much of a collection you should be storing if you are paying $1,200 a month? I'm sorry, $1,200 a year, $100 a month times 12 to store it. You should have a collection that is pretty much valued at close to $100,000. Now, I know you're gonna flip on me on that, but we're gonna do this in another video. There are formulas you can use to calculate cost of storage, cost of insuring certain collections, and they should only be a small percentage per year of the overall cost of that collection. Some of you guys are coming to me and you're telling me, Sean, I have a $25,000, $30,000 Pokemon collection, Magic the Gathering collection, or a vintage video game collection, and you tell me it's in climate-controlled storage, and I'm paying $100, $120, $130 a month to store it. And what is always my response to you guys? You gotta sell it. It's not worth paying literally 1/25 of the value every single year to store that collection and calling it a quote-unquote investment. Even if you sell off most of those pieces and you buy a couple of high-end pieces and you store them in a safety deposit box, you would be better off doing that than paying the expense of literally over $1,200 a year to store some of these collections that are only worth $25,000, $30,000 on average. I know that's triggering. I know that is very upsetting for some of you out there. I'm just giving it to you straight. Now, if you come to me and you say, Sean, I have a collection worth $120,000, and you're telling me that you're only spending $100, $120 a month to store that, that's something I can get behind. But there are formulas and there are cost analysis that has to be taken into account if you guys are storing these collections to make sure that if you truly are investing in these items, your returns are going to far surpass the cost of just maintaining and storing that particular collection. Because some of you out there, I'm going to be 100% honest, really, you're collectors. You're not investors. You are telling yourself that you are an investor because either parts of your collection have gone up in value or you want to so desperately believe that you are an investor. And there's going to be more on that coming in other videos. So I don't mean to offend anybody, but if you are one of these people that literally has $25,000 or less in a storage unit and you are paying $100, $120 every month to store those particular items, you're not doing as well as you think. The financial gains are just not there over the short term or the long term to maintain that particular unit. So that's something that you want to think about. So I'm going to end this video here. I hope this video provided great advice for you guys. If there's other topics you want me to explore in regards to off-site climate-controlled storage, let me know in the comment section below, and I will do a follow-up to this video. We are going to be talking more in depth about safety deposit boxes, vault storage, even strategies for storing a collection inside your house, if that's what you choose to do. It's all going to be right here on Reserved Investments. So thank you for watching, and have a great night.